Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another Indie Game Friday, where each week I take a look at a different independent computer role-playing game. This week I'm taking a look at a relatively new release, a tactical strategy role-playing game. Developed and published by Rockwell Studios, Himeko Sutori was released on Steam on January 31st of 2021. As stated, Himeko Sutori is a strategy tactical role-playing game where you can recruit and customize a number of forces, divide them into platoons or lances, and then maneuver them on grid-based battle maps to defeat similarly arrayed groups of enemies. It uses a 2D JRPG-style anime sprite representation on terrain and maps that are true 3D, making for a hybrid presentation that seems to be becoming more and more used amongst certain JRPGs. And that may be a bit of an issue regarding the target market appeal of this game, but I'm going to get into that later. In terms of plot, you play the scions of a noble house, and your mother was once daimyo of the land, now unified under a coalition of kingdoms in a fantasy realm. As plots and intrigue develop, you are sent out with your siblings and friends to recruit adventurers and units to solve lower-end problems, all while things developed beyond your control. When you start the game, you are treated to a cutscene of one of the characters walking through the starting settlement of Sunrise Falls. After some basic tutorial stuff, you are allowed to free explore the starting town, picking up the first few quests and familiarizing yourself with various merchants. But first, let's take a look at the characters and the pause screen. The pause screen allows you to review your roster at any time, and they are arrayed in rows of cards before you. At the bottom of the pause screen is your current treasury, which is used to purchase supplies and equipment from the various merchants. On the left are additional menus. 3 of them stand out. The first of them, Lances, allows you to assign characters to lances. These lances are essentially the individual squads that make up your units on the map. The first character added determines the potential side of the squad as they're the leader. They get the number of leadership points based on their leadership score, and each individual character takes a certain number of leadership points when they're added to the lance, usually 1. Each squad has an attack rating and a ranged attack rating based on the stats of the individual characters within it, as well as a movement speed, also based on the characters within it. You can create additional lances and assign characters to each. While at first, well-balanced lances may be your more helpful option, you can eventually specialize a lance for a particular form of combat by selecting appropriately modified characters as the game goes on. Underneath lances are the supplies. This allows you to review your inventory, a collection of all the consumable items and food, crafting material, tools, recipes, and so forth that you have. Crafting material, tools, and recipes are used at the various crafting stations in the game, while consumable supplies are basically food and are consumed as you go. As you journey through the game, time will pass, and having a fair army size requires an increasing amount of food. Having a wider variety of different types of food will actually increase your troops' effectiveness. The final option of the main 3 pause menu windows is the journal, where you can review your current and completed quests, as well as various lore information about people, places, and events within the world. This is fairly useful since there is a decent amount of story and lore involved with the various factions, nations, and settlements that you encounter in the game. The lower left-hand side of the pause menu does have a fair number of other options, but it's mostly just saving the game, loading the game, adjusting options, and so forth. As far as individual characters go, you can open up a character's card to reveal their stats and gear. Each character has a decent number of qualities, attributes, skills, and defensive stats. To start with, each character has a name and then a current class. They then have their overall character level as well as a level in their current class. Each character has a number of hit points that accrue as they level up, then experience that goes towards their level ups. Under this, there are options to change amongst the classes that they have unlocked, level up when appropriate, as well as review their equipment. Below this are their attributes, elemental traits, and skills. Basic attributes include strength, agility, will, intellect, charisma, and spirit. These contribute to the attack effectiveness of a particular classes, with each class benefiting from a different attribute. Some also affect other parts of the character. For instance, agility increases dodging ability for all classes, will reduces damage from incoming attacks, charisma increases leadership, etc. After this, there are elemental colors. Again, each class favors its own elemental color, which not only affects that class's attack, but may also increase other elements important to that class. For instance, paladins and clerics benefit from the white element that increases their leadership as well as attack. Each elemental color may also have a secondary effect for all characters. White reduces physical damage, for instance. Then there's skills. These impact either attack, spells, or special abilities. There's blades, heavy weapons, and marksmanship. Then there's the utility skills, healing, spellcraft, and control. Most of these are self-explanatory and benefit each class a little bit differently. A character with a blade-using class will, of course, benefit from more high blade skills, for instance. Under this are the defensive and utility stats. There's physical defense, magical defense, block chance, dodge chance, leadership score, which is used to make lances, critical hit chance, and then movement rate. On one side of the bottom of the character sheet are the default combat action, as well as the special abilities. Default combat action is the action taken during combat when you attack something, of course. Clerics can heal, warriors melee attack, ranged characters shoot, etc. Special abilities are special skills and effects that can be obtained during play and during level ups, and may have a variety of triggers. On the right hand side, there's the character's equipment. Each character can equip a helm, a set of armor, something in the main hand, something in the offhand, as well as an accessory. These modify the character's overall attributes, and the types of gear equipable are set by the character's current class. Furthermore, the main hand weapon will modify the character's basic attack. When you level up, you are given the choice between 3 randomly selected cards per level. Basically, 3 cards are drawn which may improve a basic attribute, unlock a special ability, increase a derived attribute, or unlock a class, and so forth. The 3 cards that you get are dependent on your character's current class, although are selected from a larger random pool. Unlocking certain advanced classes may require leveling up through other classes in a sort of tree-based manner, and then hoping for the correct card to be drawn during a level up. Back to the game itself, you start in free exploration mode. This is used in towns and allows you to talk to various NPCs, interact with crafting stations, and purchase things from appropriate shopkeepers. The view is generally overhead and may be rotated in most instances, although when you're in an enclosed space, such as inside a building or inside a smaller village, the rotating camera is mostly locked. There's also a lot of different crafting types that you can come across. As far as shopkeeps and such go, purchasing things is pretty straightforward, allowing the buying and selling of goods, although the equipment merchant will actually let you try on various gear first, making you buy it only if you don't have a copy unequipped in your inventory. Crafting stations generally require combinations of different recipes, tools, and ingredients. It's relatively straightforward, although crafting higher-end items requires you to have skills that you pick up during the random level-ups as special abilities. There's also a lot of different crafting types, as I mentioned, and some may create not only equipable gear, but also potential allies. For instance, alchemy can make slimes, and druidry can make fairies that can join your group. Once you leave town, you enter the overworld exploration map. This places you into the overworld, which is divided up into grids. Moving a certain number of grids takes time, which is represented, along with your heading, in the lower right-hand corner. You can also have an indication of how much food you have left in the party's supplies. On the lower left is the rest option, which allows you to pass time, moving through the day and night relatively swiftly, and resting your characters up. In the upper left, you get a list of active quests. On this overworld map, aside from settlements, you may also see various enemies, at least once you've detected them. These enemy troops can be engaged when you move into them, which drops you into a battle map. Each of the enemy troops also has a banner which displays the faction that they're aligned with, even for animal-type troops. There's also places of interest, such as looted carts and abandoned mines, which may be entered and explored on occasion. Some may simply grant you supplies and ingredients, while others may enter you into a separate battle map for a proper turn-based exploration with enemies. For instance, a dungeon crawl-style mine map with particular objectives to complete. The final mode of the game, and the one that you're probably going to spend most of your time in, is the battle map. Once you enter a battle map, you are placed on a battle map, which is, like the overworld map, consisting of terrain and obstacles split up into hexes. You start with the deployment phase, which allows you to place your active lances into active hexes or into reserve hexes if you don't want to risk them immediately. When you are satisfied with your deployment, you can click Start Battle to enter the turn-based mode. During each turn, you can select each of your lances and move them. You may do this in any order so long as they have movement and actions, and you may move one lance, then switch to another, do something with it, and then return to the first as long as there is movement or actions left to do. If you are within range of an enemy, you may select range attack to attack them, or you may move directly into the square to execute a melee attack. You can also elect to hold position. Once the selected lance's movement and actions are done, you can then select a facing, and once all lances are finished, you can collect and turn to pass the movement over to the enemy forces. Attacks that are executed or basically trigger any particular special abilities an enemy lance may have in reaction before the actual attack is done, and if you have any special abilities that trigger on combat start, then your own party may execute those. After the quote-unquote reactions phase, each of your lance's members will then execute an attack in turn, generally against a random enemy, although this may be weighted based on the direction you attack the enemy from. Hits reduce the hit points of an individual member of the enemy's lance. After all attacks have been executed, any healing or other spell effects that take effect after allow you to recover from damage that you might have sustained during the attack. It should also be noted that ordinarily, once a character has been defeated, friend or foe, they are just gone. So you should be careful if you are using a lance with a valued but wounded character, lest they be lost for good. Although there are suggestions that higher end skills can return them. At the end of any combat exchange, if the enemy was defeated, the characters in the lance then gain experience. The battle map may also have other things of note. Chests can be looted for various supplies, equipment, and so forth. Strategy points grant impressive buffs once any lance that you've got has captured it, and sometimes there are other objectives, such as destroying a spawn point that will continue to summon enemies until it is defeated. At the end of any particular combat, you may then receive whatever supplies, gear, and other items the enemy may have been storing. Gameplay is just mostly variations of that, as in any strategy RPG. You venture to new towns, take on quests, go out and defeat enemies in particular combat scenarios to fulfill sell quests, rinse, and repeat. Graphically, this game has a sort of neat overall look and feel, with a blend of pixel art on fully rendered worlds that once seems a little bit off, but pretty cute nonetheless. The music is actually pretty solid, with tracks that might fit into any decent medieval JRPG. I'm a little bit less sold on the interface. It has elements that are a little bit clunky, resembling something out of the late 90s or early 2000s, with some menu and text systems that just seem a little bit under-polished, although if one plays a lot of indie games, one has probably seen a lot worse. About the only thing presentation-wise that kind of bugs me are the character portraits. They're done in a way to allow for easy mixing and matching in the game of looks, and allow for showing different gear on the character, but they don't quite fit the JRPG-style pixel art of the characters on the map and can look a little bit awkward as a result. The leveling up system is interesting, and although sometimes you may get a relatively useless level, the combination of randomness and ability to select which of the 3 benefits you get each level allows for a certain degree of control and customization, while still being a little bit unpredictable. With the sheer number of character classes and different ways to approach each build, it does make for some pretty interesting character combinations, and they can be key to assembling an interesting mix of units in each lance. I feel like the crafting system might be a touch on the complex side, not because of any one individual crafting system being complex. Each offers a fairly straightforward explanation of what can be made, and is as simple as combining drops from the field, but rather because of the sheer number of different crafting options and the possible need to have skills achieved through the randomized leveling up system in order to access higher recipes. The combat system itself is a neat take, although it is not for the impatient. Some of the combats themselves can be a little bit challenging if you aren't paying attention, but they can be easily dealt with if you have a fair grasp of your strengths and weaknesses. It's a little bit different from other tactical RPGs that I've played, and seems to split the difference between a classical tactical RPG and a war game. The permadeath, the need to get a fair number of different drops for crafting, the randomness of the leveling up, and all lend to a sort of more old-school feel to the game despite its modern presentation. The name of the game, details within the setting, and the initial art style all seem to indicate Himeko Sutori is some sort of JRPG tactical RPG. But in my opinion, that really only seems like one in the aesthetics department rather than regarding the systems. I feel kind of like the audience that the mechanics of the game will appeal to, and then the target audience based on the aesthetics are a little bit divergent in that way. Finally, a quick glance about tends to suggest that there are a fair number of bugs within the game, although I didn't encounter much in the way of the worst described during my time playing it. This may have something to do with the fact that the devs are very active in bug fixing. There's been a regular stream of patches since its release. I did encounter a few display bugs during my time with it, but nothing game-breaking, more annoying than anything. Still, the state of the game when it's released from early access should be kept in mind. It may be worth waiting a little bit to see how the patches go if you're on the fence about getting it. Now, there is supposedly a campaign editor within the game, but I didn't get to play around with it enough to really tell whether it's worthwhile. I do know it had some default Unreal logos and such in it, so I'm not sure how developed it is. So, is Himeko Sutori worth the price? I think it would be if you enjoy tactical and strategy RPGs and want to look at something a little bit different from another Final Fantasy Tactics clone or Fire Emblem clone. It certainly does try new things with a battle system, and if you like squad-based war games, then it might be more up your alley. It does allow for a high degree of troop customization and some interesting tactical scenarios as a result of the combat system's design, and the storyline is actually pretty interesting from what I saw of it. I'm not sure how in-depth it goes much later in the game, because this game does require quite a bit of play before you really get into it, and unfortunately I just couldn't devote more than about 4 hours or so at the time when I was capturing footage. Anyway, I think on that note, I'm going to wrap it up here. This has been the RPG Crawler with Indie Game Friday, Himeko Sutori. As always, I'll put a link to where you can pick it up below. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, comment if you got any feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content, both tabletop and computer. Until next time, take care and goodbye.